Christians, I think, need to at least be aware of what's happening in a technologically driven culture. Because if we claim incarnation is the center of our lives, something is happening in our midst to that flesh, to our relationality. Now, all of this life is driven by prayer. You know, Christian life, gospel life, it's not a life you think about and write a paper on. Although I know there's some of you here who do that. It's a life of deep relationality with God. And prayer is simply opening up to an other. And we all have an otherness. It's simply being human. There's a longing in each person. You know, I'm sure even as you, what we call this, Karl Rahner called it a supernatural existential. It takes a German to have that kind of lengthy name, you know. But prayer is God's breathing in us and our breathing in God. This is the kind of God we're in relationship with, the fidelity of God. Prayer brings about new being. Because prayer expands us. It expands our consciousness, our awareness. You know, through prayer, and that's really just being attentive to God's presence in our lives, we realize new depths of our lives and our world. So, Francis prayed. He prayed a lot, and he prayed a long time. We always talk about Francis in community, but quite honestly, he was more often away in lonely places than he was living in community. Basically, I think the community sort of drove him crazy and he ran out to pray. But, you know, as the saying goes, whoever is unwilling to pray should be aware of action. Unprayerful action can lead to deadly ends. And yet, whoever is unwilling to act should be aware of prayer. If you pray, if you really pray, you will become changed. You'll become a new person, a fuller person. And in that prayer, you will be impelled to act in a new way. Jesus could go to the cross fully because Jesus was a man of deep prayer. And it's prayer that gave him the power to persevere through the cross. And the same with Francis. So, I would describe gospel life as ecological life. Now, this is not to be trendy, you know, because we use ecology today. But ecology refers to a household. And gospel life is really coming to an inner ecology, an inner balance, an inner relationship with God that has an attentiveness. You know, obedience doesn't mean you follow the rules. Obedience refers to attentiveness, to listening. That's what obedience means, to listen. It's a listening to God's presence in our lives, to God's love. The gospel life is a life of freedom. The more Francis engaged the gospel in his life, the freer he became. I think one of the reasons we do not have a vibrant gospel life today is because we are not inwardly free. We are inwardly bound up with our worries, our anxieties, our expectations. We're filled up, and we're not free to really give ourselves over to this God of immense love. And part of this inner ecology is self-identity, coming home again to ourselves, and what does Jesus say? Love of God, love of neighbor, love of self. No true love of God and neighbor without true love of self. And that means to see ourselves as good, as really good. And this is what I see with Francis. His life is a moving from the inner center outwards. And as his life deepened inwardly, you might say it's a heart-centered life. As his heart deepened in this involved love of God, he could move out further into the universe as brother, respecting every creature of creation, returning that creation to God. Now Francis, we're going to talk about this tomorrow, Franciscan life, contrary to popular belief, Franciscan life is a contemplative life. Contemplation is not something the poor clares do, where the sisters do, or anyone does in particular. It is a way of living in relationship to God. Contemplation is an indwelling in love. And every person here is called to a life of contemplation. It doesn't mean, oh, I don't have time for that, I don't have time because I have family and stuff. It's not about doing, it's about being. See, that's what we're talking about here. It's being in relationship. So contemplation, as we'll explore tomorrow, is a penetrating vision that gets to the truth of reality. It's a vision of the heart. We, and this is not to diminish, what we do, because I know there's a lot of good people here in this room. But we tend to live it all on the surface. So we go to church, we hear the gospel, put our stuff in the basket, go, then we have a bad week, things go downhill rapidly. Then we go to church, it's like you fill up, Church is like a gas station. We're running on low, we go, we fill it up, then away we go for the week. What we're talking about here is, you might say, becoming church. Gospel life is becoming church. And contemplation is the key. It's that becoming one in heart with God and seeing God's love in all things and loving what one sees. I guarantee you, if we really, took Francis's path to heart, wholeheartedly, we would begin to see a difference in the world around us. So what I see with Francis is that first of all, there's no distinction between action and contemplation. So we have this idea that, there are some Franciscans, they go work with the poor and they do good things, they do works of mercy, and then there are the poor clares and they go and pray. Work, what we do, flows out of what we are. What I am is what I do. There's the key. What I am is what I do. The question is, what are you? You see? Are you one in whom God lives? Are you the dwelling place for God's immense love? Because from that inner being will flow your actions. Your actions could be to serve the poor or help the sick. But your actions may simply be to say hello to the next person, you see. So what you are influences what you do, and not the other way around. This contemplative life is to be a life lived from the root of love. Gospel life sinks its roots in the love of God made visible to us in Jesus Christ. So it's a way of seeing and loving, bringing peace and forgiveness, mercy and reconciliation. Now, what I mean by contemplation is, it doesn't mean this afternoon you can say, gee, I think I'm going to take up this Franciscan life now as a contemplative, and I won't be cooking or cleaning the house anymore. I'll just be being, Get rid of that idea.